Alright, so we're going to move on to painting our paper towel roll. Earlier you saw me do a sketch of it on drawing paper. And then I've copied that. I'm going to keep this as a reference as I'm going through. And I've done pretty much the exact same drawing on the canvas. There are some ways that you can transfer your drawing to the canvas. I prefer just to do the drawing a second time. I feel like that also gives me a little bit more experience sketching it. I did a pencil drawing on here. You might notice how it feels different to draw on the canvas versus the paper. I did a pencil drawing first, and then I went over this again with charcoal so that you all could see it better. There was another thing I wanted to tell you about on this. Oh, yes. Another thing that I love about doing the paper towel as the cylindrical still life is that often they've been like squished in a package or something like that, so they're not perfect cylinders. And that also, I think, makes it a little bit less intimidating. Alright, and don't worry about painting right over top of your charcoal. It's not going to hurt it one bit. Alright, I have on my palette just black and white. I always feel a little bit more like Bob Ross when I'm painting up here. I'm going to kind of block in my values. Don't worry about your paint mixing with the charcoal. That is fine. It's not going to hurt anything. Or if you're using pencil, same thing. So it's a little bit gray right now, but I'm going to be able to go back in later and add some highlights. And as you're painting, you can correct your shapes as well. Just like we learned in that dry brush technique, when we're painting over a shadow, some of that's still going to show up. I'm going to take these kind of looping brush strokes here. I kind of like it being a little bit messy with the charcoal because it kind of gives it a little bit more texture, a little bit more interest. I'm working with a pretty gray monochromatic setup because I've got a gray tabletop and a white curtain behind. But you might want to add a little bit more color to your background. Alright. I'm going to add a little bit of black here so I get a little bit more shadow. And you can exaggerate your shadow. So this is a little bit more like a wet into wet technique where I've got this whole, like this gray and white shape, and then I'm adding that black in and mixing as we go. We have added the complexity of having either a charcoal or a pencil in the background, but that's okay. And start to blend that. So all those skills building exercises keep adding up to being able to do these ever more complex pieces. So the view that you have of my paper towel roll and of my painting are going to be looking a little bit off because my perspective is not the same as what you are seeing because I'm standing at a different angle. It's important to be able to set up your still life if you're going to be working on it in multiple sessions, being able to set it up so you can come back to it with it looking the same. Add a little white. And I kind of lost my hard line there. I can always add a little black to give this shadow a little more edge. And as the paint dries, I'll be able to go back in and make some corrections as well. These are rarely a one session thing. There's often a few steps that you need to go through to get it looking right. Alright, so I've got my shadow here, but now I also have to deal with what we call a cast shadow. This is the shadow that the object is making on the surface that it's sitting on. And try to look carefully at your shadows. There's a lot of variation. Like where can you add a little bit more black? Where can you add another highlight? All these additions to working the depth are what's going to make it look more realistic. It's not really about getting every little detail right, but getting the impressions right. And painting what you see versus what you think you know about an object. Alright, we'll get there with that. I got a little bit of light reflecting back from the curtain, I think is what's going on with this shadow. Alright, and I also made the angle going up too high, so I can go back in and correct that. By painting in my background and painting it in maybe a bright white because it's pretty highlighted. Or maybe, you know, even though I don't have a color background, I could add that in as a color if I really wanted to. Just kind of help this from getting too muddied. Making a note of where my curtain starts. For this exercise, you do not need to do the whole background. I mostly want you to be doing the paper towel roll or whatever your cylindrical object is and the cast shadow. I'm getting a little carried away though, which is fine. This is something that we're going to do in the next session anyway. Alright, from where I am, there's a little bit of a highlight right here. Get a little bit of white paint in there. Do not worry about making mistakes. You can always correct them. You can add a little more. Oh, that looks so gray. Gonna add some bright whites over here. And as they dry, that'll make a little bit more sense. It'll clear up a little bit.